Welcome back. We're going to continue talking about carbohydrates. I've kind of summarized up here the same information that's in the PowerPoint slides. All right. Our monomers associated with carbohydrates are going to be our glucose, our fructose, our galactose. That's what I drew linearly over here. What I have also done to show you how these monomers become disaccharides. And again, forgot my H. There's an H in there, disaccharides, polysaccharides. This is just a different way of drawing the chemical structures. And in terms of their natural conformation, typically most sugars form rings like this, okay? I drew it out linearly here so you could see the difference as to where the functional groups are attached. You can see when it comes together in a ring structure, we get a slightly different ring structure with, this is glucose over here, and this is fructose over here, okay? But what we're going to do to make a disaccharide, all right, we've got that same chemical reaction that I talked about at the very beginning with our dehydration synthesis. So in terms of that, what we've got is we've got a hydrogen and a hydroxyl group that combine. That's going to give us our water, okay? And with our chemical reaction, what ends up happening, I'm going to draw this a little more shorthand just because it'll be quicker. I put my oxygen here, got an oxygen here, like that. And what we'll have then is our bond between our glucose and our fructose. All right, so that's going to be a dehydration synthesis. When sugars are hooked together, it gives off water. Likewise, if you want to break the sugar molecule, you're going to need to put water in to have the hydrolysis reaction happen, okay? So the formation of our disaccharides are going to be a dehydration synthesis. Our disaccharides are going to be sucrose. That's what I'm showing you here. Glucose and fructose together make sucrose. Another disaccharide we have is lactose. Lactose is a combination of glucose and galactose. All right, also a disaccharide, so you just have two sugars. Maltose is going to be the last disaccharide we'll talk about. Maltose is a disaccharide of two glucose molecules. All right, and in terms of that maltose, where that's going to come into play and where that's important is that's the sugar that's used in brewing things like beer, okay, or malt beverages. That's where the malt comes from. It's sugar. Because what you have to do, essentially, to make beer, it's a process of fermentation. You're breaking down sugars. So you have to provide sugar for that reaction to happen, okay, in order to generate the ethanol. So with our disaccharides, those are our disaccharides. If we tag on, in the terms of maltose, if we take two glucose molecules, stick them together, and then we stick a third glucose molecule onto that maltose, we've now graduated from being a disaccharide to going to a polysaccharide, okay? So polysaccharides are long chains, okay? More than two, although typically they're much more than two. They can be in the 10s, 20s, hundreds of sugar molecules stuck together by a dehydration synthesis, okay? And the polysaccharides I want you to be familiar with are going to be starch, glycogen, and cellulose, okay? Those are all polysaccharides. They're much longer chains. Starch is going to be things like in your potatoes, the starch associated with potatoes, that would be a polysaccharide. Glycogen is a bit more specific, Okay, starch typically tends to be just long chains of glucose stuck together. Glycogen's a little bit different. Instead of having long single chains, you've got some branches that come off of it. And I've got some nice diagrams in the PowerPoints for you to look at for glycogen. It's much more branched than a starch would be. Glycogen is going to be one of the main sources of energy that your body saves when it needs it for, say, the fight or flight response. The liver and your muscle cells are two of the main organs in the body where glycogen is actually stored. You want to store it in the muscle because if you need to activate that fight or flight response, if you need to run or if you need to fight someone, you need to have energy available. And really when we're talking about humans, that energy is stored, the carbohydrates are stored as glycogen, okay? Starch and cellulose are more specific to plants, okay? So plant products are going to be made up of starch. That's going to be long chains of glucose put together. Cellulose is also long chains of glucose, but there's some hydrogen bonding between the chains of starch. That makes it a more complex molecule, okay? So in terms of that, in terms of our diet, that cellulose is typically what we think of as fiber. Our bodies aren't able to break those bonds in between the strands of starch, okay? So that's what comes through our digestive system undigested as our fiber, all right? So in terms of that, monomers, these are the individual units. So the glucose, the fructose, galactose. Disaccharides, you're talking about having two monomers put together. Polysaccharides, you've got more than two monomers strung together, okay? With poly meaning many, saccharides again referring to our sugar, okay? If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for your attention.